This week on Casual Watch Talk podcast, Todd and I do our watch obsessions, then we talk all about Rolexes. Are YouTubers right that Rolex prices are going through the floor? We'll discuss with some examples we found. Keep listening to find out more. Hi guys, welcome back to this week's episode of Casual Watch Talk podcast. You're joined by Sam and Todd. Todd, how have you been?
Hey everybody, I'm fantastic. How about you?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Well, we're going to be talking all things Rolex, mainly to please the algorithm, but also we do have some of our own thoughts. But let's kick it off with, should we do a wristwatch check? What are you wearing?
For sure. I am wearing one that I bought from you back in the day, not too long ago. It's the G-Shock GA, it's the GAB 2100, I believe, and it's that special edition that you got in Asia.
Yeah,
Japan. It's a sort of a Japan, yeah. It was like a Save the Ocean kind of a deal that you got it under. It's a very cool black and sort of this typical kind of like, I'm a serious oceanographer yellow guy color scheme. Fantastic watch. I love wearing this when I travel. It's not crazy big like a lot of G-Shocks are. And this is the royal, what do we call this? The Casio.
Yeah, Casio.
But a special edition version of it. My favorite thing is that little indicator there where instead of a pointer, it's got that whale. It was a very special piece and sort of a permanent piece of my collection.
Yeah, it was really cool that I did get that on a trip to Japan. I wanted to buy a G-Shock in Japan, and then once I reviewed it, I was happy to move it on. But I just wanted that experience of buying one because some of those department stores in Japan, they've got loads of different G-Shocks, loads of Citizens. They even had Spinnaker in one of them in the case.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they had loads and loads of those sort of watches. So it was it was quite a cool thing for me and some interesting Casios and stuff. But I was on a strict orders not to bring back a suitcase full of watches.
Well, as you say that, and you might want to cut this out or not, you make me think of something that I didn't realize. So I got another advertisement from Long Island Watches. I didn't realize he was a retailer for San Martin.
I think he's just started doing it.
Oh, that's an interesting move. The pieces are, as we've discussed in the past, homage copies, and
yeah,
but you know they do have a fan base because he does carry Spinnaker too, which I do like. I have a Spinnaker watch and I like them.
Yeah, he does have a good mix. He definitely does have some homages. I mean, his own brand Island Watches certainly I would say is a homage or a reimagining of certain models, but he has that Duxot, is it as well? That's definitely a Submariner. A cheeky.
Oh yeah, I would say his brand though. I liked how you described it. He doesn't really copy. It is. Actually what he makes I think is truly more of a homage than AliExpress. He takes inspiration from, but then does his own jam. You know, which I kind of like.
I totally agree. Yeah, he takes an SKX, I think is how he started out with, or an SKX Seiko 5 looking watch, but then it would never be confused for one because he has his own dial, vastly upgraded, because when he started doing it, he had sapphire on there, didn't he? Better movements and things like that. Sapphire bezels.
Arguably, probably a better movement.
Yeah.
I mean, bracelet.
Yes. Yeah. He had those aftermarket bracelets. Yeah, he's remixing, isn't he? He's like a DJ.
Remix. Yeah, I like it. Okay, yeah, let's go with that. A remix.
A cheeky remix. Okay, well, I am wearing...
And what are you wearing?
I am wearing my Bremont. Is it my Bremont?
Bremont.
Yeah, I've been wearing it quite a bit recently. I sold off a lot of my watches just to kind of reevaluate the collection again, but this one stayed, which is amazing to me considering the grief that I've given Bremont over the years. I would still like to get the rubber. I would still like to get the rubber strap for it because the bracelet does overpower this watch. It doesn't taper. It's a real poor design. But it does look good on the bracelet, and
yeah.
The spring bars are so close to the watch case, you can't really get any other watch straps on it. Macola over at Man Cave Leather made me a curved end leather for it, which looks pretty good. Yep. So I've got the stainless steel, but I would like their rubber one. You have to get it from a Bremont store, though. You have to order it from a Bremont store. They don't do it online. And I've been in email communication with the New York store, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet.
Hamilton notoriously does that, but with the curved end length or the curved spring bars. And I don't remember how I found it. I did a search and I may have got it off of Amazon, but I got a spring bar curver or spring bar bender.
They look like
cheeky lente
type of thing.
Kind of like that. And it's like this little pair of pliers and it has nylon sort of grips at the end. So you can give a normal spring bar a little bit of a curve and then have some fun with those watches that are finicky like that. And that way I've been able to swap out bracelets or straps not bracelets, but straps as I like, even though they're a little tight, because that's a Hamilton. They love to have a little tight fit, and they have the curved leather straps. But if you curve a spring bar and you put it on another strap, you can make it work.
You know what's interesting? I know we're going to get onto Rolex, but when I had my Datejust, you couldn't put a leather strap onto it. Well, you could, but the way that the end link integrated with the case had a very sharp edge on the inside. There was a lip on the inside, I think, probably to stop them.
Oh, right.
But I had a leather strap for it. It just shredded the end of the strap. I mean, maybe a curved one would have worked, but also there wasn't that much clearance. And again, I spoke to McCullough about it. He was like, yeah, I actually tell that to people if they're ordering Datejusts, that the new versions, it's not smooth on the inside. There is a lip, and it is quite sharp.
That's interesting. It's an interesting design choice by them. I'm curious if that is intentional, because Rolex is so much about their brand, their image, and their presentation. Hey, we don't want you throwing this on leather. This is how it's supposed to look. Leave it like that.
I did put it on a NATO just to try it, but it looked super weird. The Datejust on it.
You got to be Adrian to pull that off. I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it is. Explorer looks quite good, but there's something about the Datejust that didn't end up looking good. But I've been sent some NATOs actually in for a test from Canadian Strap Mill, they're called.
Okay.
Quite interesting. They've sent me not a leather NATO, but a leather strap, and then they sent me a couple of NATO straps. They're sort of a cross between a seat belt and a normal NATO, so they've got a little bit of stiffness, but they also have that sort of silky look to them, and they've got their own stitching on there. I'll leave a link in the description down below. They did send me a few in for talking about. They just wanted to know my thoughts on it, because I actually told them that I did really want to do a review on them, because I think it's hard now doing a strap review, a NATO strap review. I don't know if the audience really loves it.
Well, and I'd be curious. You said a leather NATO?
No, it wasn't. Sorry, I spoke. It was leather, just a loader. But I have had leather NATO straps. I've always wanted the one that Artisans de Genève made a limited. They're the ones that highly customize Rolexes, and they customized a Rolex for Spike Lee, the producer, and it was called Cool Hand Brooklyn instead of Cool Hand Luke, the Paul Newman film. And for that, it was a Daytona. It was blue. I'll have to try and find a link for it. It looked awesome. But they included a NATO with it, a blue NATO, but it was alligator or crocodile skin, and it looked really cool. I've tried to find an alligator or one, but they're very hard to find. It's like, if you've ever, that's really hard to find, a NATO that's made from an exotic skin other than leather. And also what's hard to find is shark mesh that's titanium.
Yep. So a couple of those, well, you give the loaded questions or the loaded topics. So I think the exotics are challenging to do as a NATO, because either they're very delicate or they're very thick. So you're going to have a problem either way with that. And they tend to be sensitive to water and oil and all sorts of things. So like, because I'm a bit of a cowboy boot fanatic. But you have to take care of those. Like they make certain oils for reptile skins, and certain ones that are for fish, and they have certain ones for regular leather, and you have to keep them clean with a certain conditioner, and then you have to and I can't imagine with how tough just being on a wrist and everything it's exposed to, and then just the human oils and dirt, like I feel like it could be really rough on some of those exotics. And then you said, what was the other? Well, I lost it, but you had another topic in there too about another material.
Titanium shark mesh.
Oh, titanium shark. I wonder if that's because it's the same with, it took a while for people to make a nice titanium bracelet. I wonder if it's difficult creating something that articulates that finely out of that material.
Yeah, they are available. Like, for example, the No Time to Die Omega comes on a titanium. Okay. And I think maybe one of the Pro Ploffs, I think, had a titanium. So Omega do make them high end. It's weird because sometimes I've looked on AliExpress for them. They're titanium, but what they mean is they've given steel grade look to make it look like titanium, which I guess you could. Because I've often looked for a titanium mesh. I do like those shark mesh bracelets. I think that's probably one of the hardest things to shop for, because their quality is widely different, and it's really hard pictures online working out whether they're good quality or not.
It's all over the board, and I do love that look. It's funny though, because that is one of the ones, my wife has a real aversion to sort of those metal mesh bracelets. She doesn't like those straight end bars, and I know that's sort of a vintage look. I like it, but it's one of those ones I wear it for me, and my wife will look at my wrist like, oh, I don't really like that one. It's like the bracelet ruins the whole watch for her.
Yeah, it's funny that the reason I think shark mesh is the only one that you can wear that looks good straight end linked. I think for me anyway, what I like, but online you can't tell the thickness of the mesh because too thin a mesh looks I don't like if it's too thin a mesh. And then sometimes you get them where you have to like cut it with pliers, don't you, or whatever, or cable snips to actually adjust it yourself, or they have like a crazy big deployant to compensate for the fact that it has to be adjustable, or they have little sections where you can unscrew them, but sometimes that looks weird. So I think I've gone through quite a few, but I've never found one that I've consistently wanted to wear on a watch all the time.
I'll have to. Well, that could be a topic for another conversation. I have a Seiko 5 that I got one, and it was, you know, I'm into the Ricky from Scottish Watches world of like, hey man, sometimes a $15 strap does a great job, and I've got one that it's on that watch, and I love it on that watch. So it just depends.
Yeah, again, that's this thing with shark mesh, isn't it? That you can spend $15 on one, or they go up to hundreds. A Mark at Long Island Watches has got some that are 230, but then you don't know if that's good. You don't know if they're right for you, or because they can also be too heavy, can't they? They can be like a thick weave chainmail or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, should we jump on to watch obsessions? What have you been obsessed with this week?
Well, I've only been obsessed with this one for about 2.5 hours now, and it it just came across my radar, and it's one of those new Omega Olympic releases, and it's this new, what is this one called? Hold on, let me get to the top of the article. It's the Seamaster 37mm Milano Cortina in full moonshine gold, which means this is way out of my price point at $19,300, but it is, I love the look of a vintage watch. I don't like the maintenance of a vintage watch, and I think we've talked about that before. I worry about it too much. I worry about the water resistance. Good news, this Seamaster has 100 meters of water resistance, which is unbelievable for a nice dress watch like this. It has it doesn't have any what I would call sort of tacky branding on the face of the watch. So as you're looking at it, you wouldn't even know this is a special Olympic one, and they made it not special Olympic, a special version for the Olympics.
So it's Winter Olympics.
But it's on the back, which is fine on the case back, because now it's like, okay, this is something special. It's kind of cool, but it's, you know, I don't need to broadcast it to the world. Master chronometer movement inside. There is nothing to hate here, except Sam will hate that there's no date and that it's 37 millimeters.
Yeah, it's very distinctive. It looks like it's a reissue of one that they'd done previously for the 1956 Melbourne Olympic Games, which is interesting.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And that one actually had a nice strap, a nice bracelet on it. Yeah, no, I do. It does look cool. I mean, that pricing is pretty wild, isn't it? But
oh yeah,
it does look really
but I mean, gorgeous watch. The crown, the crown being hexagonal, and those awesome end links. Those are lugs. They're not quite bullhorn, but they're kind of like an architectural bullhorn. I don't know how to describe them, but what a great looking watch. If I had the money and the wherewithal, that would be one for me on my shopping list. But I don't.
On the Sunday live stream, we were talking about Omega, and the one Omega Speedmaster one of the new Omega Speedmasters that I absolutely love, but again, I just can't get my head around the price, is the Pilot watch, the Pilot Speedmaster, this is the one, if you've seen it, it's a new Speedmaster that came out, and it looks, I guess, like aviation gauges on the dial. It's got sort of aviation style hands, and then it's got a lot of yellow, orange on it, but it's in the case of maybe a first Omega in space type case. But Dave thankfully, is, because I've been obsessing about this watch, I'm like, oh, I love it, but $9,500 for a Speedmaster, I just can't. For like a stainless steel Speedmaster, I just can't compute it in my head. But Dave apparently has tried it on, and he says it is way too thick. It's 14.7 thick, but he says it feels every bit of that on the wrist. So he did me a great service and put me off it, because if he thinks it's thick, it's probably going to put me off as well if I tried it on. So he did me a great service there.
I watched you guys talking about it, and I was shocked about that too. Like, I'm curious what movement they put in it, because it's an automatic movement probably, right? So it must have a rotor. So it's not the hand wind, but My father has one of the original like 1970s moon watches, and it's nowhere near that thick. Like I don't understand what's going on. It's almost like there's a Valjoux movement in it, like the 7750 for it to be that thick. It's a good looking watch. I don't know that I get what's going on. I don't know that I love the color scheme for me. I like a colorful watch, but when I'm spending $10,000 for a watch, I kind of want it to look serious and not too playful.
No,
that's me though.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. It's weird. It's a weird one for me because I had a Speedmaster for so long, and I remember getting it because it was really, to me, it sounds weird saying it now, but it was a tool for telling the time. It looked like an instrument for telling the time, the white markers and the subdials and everything. But I just can't compute in my head them being $7,000 now. They seem to have gone from 5.5 to 7,000 in no time at all.
Well, and I think this is part of what we're going to be talking about a little bit today. And because there's talked about this on the live stream, and I think there's a couple, like Dave agrees with me, I think somewhat. Omega is clearly, there's two things happening simultaneously. Omega is trying to figure out how to get that magic of Rolex and be in that Rolex world. And Rolex is trying to take themselves out of that ballpark altogether and upscale themselves simultaneously level, and put Tudor into Rolex spot now. And so there's this funny dance where Omega's prices, and I don't know, I don't work there, but the prices seem to be just arbitrary. Like, why did that make that huge price jump? And other than we're trying to make sure everybody knows we're a serious watch brand, and we cost a lot of money as well. It seems like that. Would like to think I'm wrong, but I don't know. I can't justify these, like you said, these price jumps in my head.
It's interesting. I think I talked about this as well on Sunday. We'll probably we'll definitely be talking about this when we talk about Rolex coming up, but I think the same thing with Omega is because they're so expensive now. Omega don't care about this. This is just a personal story, but I think you're gonna miss that. Oh, my granddad owned an Omega, or you're missing like that generational thing, because Speedmaster was always, when I grew up, obviously it had the space connotation, but always you were like, oh, an architect or an engineer has a Speedmaster. It had that connotation. Somebody that was really had like a technical job would usually have a Speedmaster. They would joke that architects drove Saabs, a stereotype, but that what often was true. And you're kind of missing that because now it's, oh no, you've got to be elite. You've got to have a lot of money in your pocket to buy this really cool utilitarian watch. And you miss that romance of, because I know somebody who got a Speedmaster for a graduation gift. I've known engineers that have worn it. It had that little nods to, hey, this person really knows or appreciates engineering or really knows about watches that they're wearing a Speedmaster, instead of it being like, oh, this person's got like a load of money now, they're wearing a Speedmaster. It never had that mystique to it that it was a expensive watch, so that's why people got it. It had the mystique that it was really a tool watch, and that's why people bought it.
And I think that's the challenge for Omega, to try to cross that bridge, because again, as we've talked about in the past, people see Rolex on that dial and they're like, oh, expensive watch. People don't have that same, normal people. They see an Omega and they're like, that's a nice watch. There's no correlation there to, this is a very expensive watch. At least in my world, $10,000 is an expensive watch. I don't know how they're going to bridge that gap. And I'm bummed out about it too, because when I first was really getting into building up my collection, you could get yourself a really nice vintage Omega for not a lot of money. And I think the crazy retail prices have translated down, where the guys who have them now are like, oh no, well, it's worth this much because Omega's, but it's the same problem.
Well, the first upload I ever made with Miguel at SoCal Watch Reviews, it must be 6 or 7 years ago now. It's just when he was starting off his channel, and we did an upload on the Speedmaster. They called it the Speedy Reduced, didn't they? Which sounds like a bit of an insult now, but that's what it was. That's what they actually called it, the Speedmaster Reduced. And we made the upload about what a great watch it was for a pre-owned market. I think you could probably pick them up for $1,500 then. It was. Now they're $3,000. You alluded to on last week's episode is a very complicated movement to get serviced, because it's different modules on top of the base movement, isn't it? Because of the different functionalities it was a chronograph, but it had the date, and some of them had the date, but it was a separate hand on there, or it had like a day dates on them and stuff. Those Schumachers and stuff like that. You're going to miss that. It's all right saying, okay, enthusiasts will still buy Omega at that price, but that's a rich enthusiast. If you're a watch collector and you've got a collection of Omegas, that's a lot of money that you've obviously got to spend on watches. The casual collector, I don't think, would necessarily have a whole bunch of Omegas, because that's a lot of money now in now money. And you used to be able to get a deal on them. A Joma shop used to be a deal on those Aquaterras. I'm kind of kicking myself I never got one of my favorite Aquaterra, the 15,000 Gauss, the Bumblebee one.
Oh yeah,
I'm kicking myself I never picked one of those up on Joma shop when they were like $3,500. At the time I thought, oh, $3,500's expensive, but now they're absolutely outrageous. I think Omega sells them for $7,000 for an Aquaterra, and then you can't get a deal on them. But you used to be able to get a standard Aquaterra with a blue dial, say, on Joma shop around $2,000, if not. They used to be a real steal, and now I was looking on Joma shop the other day, and they're at $4,000 or $5,000 for an Aquaterra now.
And you remind me, that was a watch I had. I had one of the reduced, the smaller ones, and it was significantly smaller than the Moonwatch. When you wore it, you looked like you were wearing a dress watch. It was considerably smaller and thinner than this watch you're describing right now. I don't understand what changed that the one that you like is 14, almost 15 millimeters thick, when the one I had was, gosh, I don't remember the measurements, but if it was more than 12, I'd be shocked. It was a slender, well-fitting, under-the-cuff, very unassuming watch. That was the one that, boy, when I had to get that one serviced, that was a bite out of my wallet. It was about $850, and after I had it serviced, I kind of was like, I think I don't know that I want to have older watches right now. And that was the first, it was really funny. That was the trade I made for the Tudor 41 millimeter Heritage, the Black Bay Heritage. And I remember being on a Tudor group, and I put that Seamaster up and said, anybody here interested in trading for a Black Bay? And I know immediately I got, you're crazy. That's not a trade, blah, blah, blah. And one guy came in, he was like, serious? And, we were able to work out a really nice, amicable trade. I put in a little extra cash, but he was happy, I was happy, everybody was happy. But that, like you just said, that watch has doubled in price since I traded it to him. Yeah.
And it's not because I look on Chrono a lot, and it's interesting. I mean, we're kind of bleeding into the main topic here. I've been looking on Chrono, and I was kindly invited on Bobby Leggs's channel last night. And he was talking about how pre-owned watch prices have gone down, and that maybe in some cases they have. But I think a lot of people are holding their ground, especially on Omegas and stuff. Like, there's a lot of inventory. There's a lot of inventory on Chrono now, a lot of Japanese inventory of Omegas and stuff. And the people seem to be trying to hold the line on the prices, I think.
Yeah, I think they're digging in. I'd be curious what the actual trades are happening, or if they're just not selling right now, because a lot of the forums that I'm in, it seems like it's a real, during COVID, and it wasn't like making money, it was just fun. You'd buy a watch, you could sell it a couple weeks later, like, yeah, I don't like that. And you could flip around, flipping is not the right word, but you could be like, I don't like this one, sell it, and not take a bath. And right now, the economy is such that people are, I'm not parting with my money right now. And then me sitting there going like, well, I'm not selling it for that price right now. So I'd be curious how much actual commerce is occurring when people are trying to hold on to those prices.
Okay, so my watch obsession is, this was one that Thomas on one of the live streams, where I did a members only live stream. If you're interested in joining the main channel membership, the link is in the description down below. I did my first members only live stream this week, which was really fun. It was just a Q&A, but somebody asked me about this Hamilton American Classic, the Chronomatic 50 Chronomatic 50 limited edition, 250 pieces. And this is pretty wild. It's a huge watch. It's 48 mil by 52.
That's a beef.
But this just looks like a retro futuristic rally watch, doesn't it? It looks like something out of Fallout or something, like a 1950s design, steampunky design, I think. Maybe not steampunk, but sort of that retro
futuristic. It's super cool looking. I like the hidden lugs. Probably wears better than those numbers sound from a end to end. What are all the buttons for? There's so many buttons on that.
Yeah, I think there's an inner rotating bezel, isn't there? And then right, what is that extra? Well, one's the crown. Then this, I wonder what this one up here maybe is.
No, on the other side there's a crown and two more pushers. What is going on?
Oh yeah.
There's 5 ways to access this watch.
Do you know what?
And there's only 2 subdials. What is going on?
They've probably had to, just to balance the case out, then they've had to find.
They just put some buttons on. You could They're fidget buttons. They click when you push them.
Let's just see. So it says distinctive and daring attention-grabbing Chronomatic 50 is reimagined from its historical forebearer. Limited to 150 pieces, the Chronomatic features a striking palette of contrasting colours in blue and orange, reflecting the dynamic and electrifying facets of speed. Its racing spirit is highlighted with a tachymeter indication and a perforated two-tone leather strap powered by a H31 automatic movement with 48mm dial and authentic 70 stars. But it doesn't say what the actual functions are, though, does it? Weird. You're right, though.
No,
there's like 2 extra crowns that you can't work out what they do. One must be an inner rotate. This must be an inner. There must be an inner rotating bezel on it.
and that's like their value movement. I have a Hamilton chronograph. That's a chunky watch, but they make them work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this one is 16 thick. Wow. Okay.
Oh, that's super chunky.
Yeah, it's making the Speedmaster we were just talking about seem svelte. Well, let's dive into our main topic, and we were going to discuss Rolex pricing. A lot of YouTubers have been doing Rolex prices are coming down, but are they really? It's an interesting topic, isn't it? I think, Todd.
It's interesting because it sort of sets the standard, I think, for the entire watch market in some ways. The prices are coming down, but it depends what you mean by are they really? They're not dropping to the floor. Rolexes are still holding value, but there was a period there, as everybody who listens to this podcast probably knows, where they were just considered the darling of investment. Not even watches. This is where I'm going to put my money instead of the stock market. This is where I'm going to put my money instead of just precious metals, because Rolex values are so high. I'm going to buy them. I'm going to buy Rolexes and just put them in a safe for my grandchildren because it'll be worth millions. And that will not be true.
No.
Or probably will not be true. Let me put it that way.
We were looking at the GMT, the Pepsi GMT, and I know somebody who walked into a Rolex AD, so Chris over at Clicky Bezel channel. He made an upload on this where he did, well, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description down below. He walked into a Rolex AD and put his name down, and I don't even think it was for a Pepsi, but they called him back and they actually got a Pepsi GMT there and then, it's not out of the realms of possibility to get one at retail. I guess it would depend on in the country where you are. I think it's in California. But we were looking at the charts of them, and it seems like the real peak for the Pepsi GMT, which if you got one at retail, so I think this is what we're kind of saying, isn't it? Where people are saying Rolex prices are coming down, but they mean on the resale market. Actual Rolex isn't reducing the price. Rolex is increasing the price. But even on the pre-owned market, so a Rolex, this Pepsi GMT on the Jubilee is about $11,000 with the new Rolex pricing. But still on Chrono, they are trading, and Chrono 24 does a great job of showing a chart of watches that have sold. So one sold on January the 31st this year for $22,000. So that's double retail.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But the peak of it, which is absolutely outrageous, is in February the 28th, 2022. 3 years ago-ish, one sold for $31,374. So I don't, to your point.
Well, you picked the darling, though, right now, because there's been so much speculation that watch is going away. They've been teasing and talking about that the Pepsi's done. And I don't understand why. I think Britt was talking about it. I think Jenny L, she's been speculating that the Pepsi's going away. So you're picking one where that one people might still hold on to and hold value on because they think it's disappearing. I don't know that others are holding value quite like that.
Yeah, the rumor was that apparently that bezel's quite hard to make, isn't it? The blue and the red bleeds.
I think it was the red is the big challenge. Yeah, because they would rather make the Batman, the Batgirl is the conversation than this Pepsi dial.
But even in 2022, there was a rumor it was going to go away, wasn't it? Whoever paid $31,000 for it, I cannot. If you could pick them up 3 years later for $22,000 on the pre-owned market, you could, in theory, get them. Whoever paid $31,000 for it, if they thought that was an investment, that's going to take decades decades for it to, even if it ever will go back up to that.
Well, yeah, and I think that was just a really unique time. You know, we were in the middle of the pandemic. People really were uncertain as to what was going on. There were supply chain issues. There was I don't know what caused this hype. I think there's this, oh, you know what it was? People talked about this. There was a lot of people at home, couldn't travel, and suddenly they were kind of, the guys the businessmen who had the money were like, well, buy another watch. And more watches were being bought at retail, which then Rolex did have for a second this shortage, which created this, oh man, it's hard for me to get one. It's impossible to get one. But that has changed dramatically as well. A couple of things happened. We're back to normal-ish. It's 2025. There's a lot of wackiness going on. But everybody's at work and, you know, kind of doing their thing. And Rolex is upping their production, building more facilities, which it's curious. You know, they were doubling their factories, and it's like they're kind of hurting their own initial sale. And I've even heard some speculation that there are apparently some stores now that can take down the exhibition-only signage, that the Rolex dealer can just go ahead and sell those watches that have been there. Yeah, I don't know that we'll ever experience that level of mania or hype that we did during that period from 2020 to 2022, 23. So yeah, to get that money back, it's just going to be a matter of, you got to hold on to that for your great grandkid or something, and maybe it'll be worth it then if it's still in great shape. I don't know, but is it really worth it? Because in those dollars then, it'll maybe just worth equivalent to $14,000 today.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could buy a vintage one for probably around 31,000, couldn't you? Even with a,
yeah.
But I think the difference between the vintage ones and the new ones are the vintage ones, they age, don't they? Whereas that Pepsi will never age. I mean, it will get scratched up, obviously.
Per se.
The dial will never go tropical, or the bezel will never go to a magenta like some of the aluminium ones did. But it's really interesting. I guess it was, like you said, it was this FOMO that was created, but it didn't make sense at the time, did it? Because it wasn't, Rolex never do, they do discontinue models. So I can see why, if you really wanted a Tiffany OP or whatever, then you probably would have to pay more now. But some of the models that went up, the Pepsi, for example, the Batman, stuff like that went up quite a lot, or the Daytona. I mean, I know these things are hard to get hold of, but it's not like they're going away. It's not
right.
Rolex will cease to exist, or they did a limited edition that only, although having said that, I'm kind of defeating my own argument here, because that's the randomness of Rolex, isn't it? They will kill a popular watch and nobody will ever know why.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, they're a massive manufacturer compared to a lot of the other, you know, high horology watch brands who maybe make, you know, 5,000 units a year or 10,000 units a year. You know, Rolex is doing like 1 million. You know, this is not a quote unquote hard to get item. There has just been an artificial sense of the FOMO. Like, I have to have one. And there's also a period that happened here for a minute where a lot of watch collectors were like, again, I like Rolex. I think they make a very good watch. But there was this perception of like, the people who buy Rolexes really aren't watch collectors. They are salesmen. They are presidents of companies. There are people who are trying to just show off wealth as opposed to appreciate a well-made timepiece. And so I think there was right now we're seeing sort of a little bit of a backlash where people are like, I don't really want to be associated with that mindset, but I still like watches. And so people are exploring other brands as well. You know, Rolex is still going to be Rolex. You're not going to get rid of that because it's just so powerful as a brand. But, you know, we're in a weird sort of reset, I guess I should say, as to what that brand is and what those costs will be.
Shall we look at some models? Let's take, for example, 2024, sure. A few 2024, 2025 models, and see how they've been trading. Actually, maybe we'll have to do sort of 2022 models and see how they were trading in 2022. So let me, I'm going to use Chrono 24.
Let's start with this. Yeah, use Chrono 24. Let's start with the basic. Let's just start with Oyster Perpetual.
Okay, so let's do Rolex, filter Rolex, year 2022. Okay, so let's apply that. Okay, so now I've applied the filter on Chrono 24 to be Rolex and all models that were made in 2022, and we'll gauge their prices. So let's start with the first on the list is the left-hand drive Sprite, as it was known. So the left-hand drive. This was a sensation, wasn't it, Todd, when it came out?
Well, it may have been. I wasn't so sensationalized by it. They just flipped over the movement. It just spun it around in the case and said, "Look, we've made a new watch." I was never very excited about that one. And, you know, I'm a left-handed person, and I still felt them weird to look at. I don't know.
Yeah. So Rolex on their site. So assuming you could get this view, Rolex sell this model. The recommended retail price at the moment is $11,350. So this is the left-hand drive. This is the Sprite that came. I think it came out in. I actually think it came out in 2022. So maybe this is a good example. April 2022. So when they first came out, the first one to trade on Chrono was 42,000. So that's 30,000.
Wow.
30,000 over list. And then as we come closer in April 2023, so a year later, they were trading hands at 23,000. So from a peak of, well, the peak was May the 31st, 2022, when one traded for 45,000. And then just a year later, in April 2023, one traded for 23,000. So a full 20,000, over $20,000 less than the peak in 2022, but still double the Rolex RRP. And then if we come all the way to the last one that sold, the most recent one, January the 31st, 2025, one traded hands for 17,699.
So that goes back to saying what we were saying initially. No, they're still worth what you paid for them, plus a little premium. But when guys say prices are falling, that is a dramatic fall. We're talking $30,000 drop. So yeah, that's a dramatic, in only a couple of years, a dramatic price decrease.
Exactly. Yeah. So it shows that they're not a bargain to buy even on the pre-owned market now. They're just not as insane as they were. So that was a great example there. So let's look at the next one. So that again, that was the Sprite, as it's commonly known, the left-hand drive GMT. So let's look at
while you're looking it up. If any of the listeners have had the experience of going into and just buying one without being on a waiting list, please let us know. I'd love to see a message, or because I'm curious. I believe the days of those exorbitant waiting lists are going out the door, that you're going to be able to go in and just buy one here soon. So why would you pay this premium?
Exactly. And I bought two. They obviously, one was an OP, I believe it was the 40 mil OP, and then I bought a Datejust 40 Datejust, and I got both of those from a boutique, from an authorized dealer, from a Rolex store, and about between 4 and 6 months I had to wait. I think the OP I had to wait for 3 months, and then the other one was 6 months for the Datejust. But I got exactly what I wanted. That was
during the peak.
Yeah, during.
That was during.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so our friend, the Rolex GMT Master 2, affectionately known as the Batman. Again, we're looking at watches that were released in watches that were produced in 2022, because we're using that as that was the peak. So in 2022, so if we look at 2022, right at the peak, the most expensive one that sold, so this was March the 31st, 2022, one sold for 24,000. So that's double retail, because these retail for around 11,000. And then the following year, March the 31st, 2023, again, it's kind of holding it there. That's 17,633. So from 24,000 to 17 in a year. So what's that? That's about sort of $8,000 less. And then
30%.
Yeah, 30%. And then today, the last one that sold traded on the 31st of this year, 2025, for 16,569. So from the 2022, 24,000, and then the most recent is 64,000. So yeah, about 8,000 or so less.
I find it interesting that they're still trading above retail.
Yes.
I mean, people talking about the prices falling, and they have fallen, but my goodness, there is no other. I don't think there's any other watch you're going to go buy of any caliber that's going to sell for over retail after it's been used.
That's 5,000 over retail, isn't it? Around 5,000 over retail for the what you would think is just the bread and butter GMT, Batman, blue and black. Let's have a look at a couple of others here. Okay, so this was a favorite, wasn't it? The Blue Sky Dweller. So we're looking at a Blue Sky Dweller, year of production 2022. So at the peak in 2022, this one sold in April 2022. So let's just look at the retail for the Sky Dweller. So assuming you could get this watch new, the Sky Dweller retail is 16,400.
Okay.
In the peak is, so 16,400 in the peak that this sold for in April the 30th, 2022, one sold for 36,000 on Chrono. So that's 20,000 over retail. Then a year later, April 2023, that went down from 36,000 to 23,100. Obviously, guys, we're not taking condition into account. We're just going off the sales model here.
Yeah.
But then most recently, actually, it's gone up a little bit. So most recently, it's one traded for 22,000. So that's interesting. The actual lowest that one sold for was 20,000. So they've actually ticked up a little bit. That was in 20,000. Well, 21,000-ish was in September the 30th, 2024. And then most recently, January the 31st, 22,101. So they are still selling sort of 6,000 over their retail.
So they're doing well, but it's interesting as you look at each of these charts, they're all peaking right there in that same window in 2022. Like that was the crazy mania that was happening.
Yeah, it's wild, isn't it? I mean, I wonder how many years, because Chrono 24, it shows that up until from their first recorded sale of this watch was in 2017. So in 2017 up to, we'll say pre-pandemic, so we'll say
2019.
February. Yeah, we'll say February 2022, because it was sort of March, wasn't it? All kicked off. They were selling at 21,000. So they've actually gone down to pre-pandemic prices, and they were only ticking up, you know, a couple of grand a year, maybe, to get up to 36,000, 20,000. I mean, God, that's like 10 or 15 years, assuming that it ticks up like
some significant peak that was happening there. And it was just a really funny time. And like we've been saying, the prices are falling, quote unquote, but the sky is not falling. The price, they are still selling above retail. It's just an interesting indication of where the market's at today.
Yeah, I think just to summarize this, I know a lot of the videos that I've watched talking about Rolex's prices coming down. Everyone's like, "Oh, they're in trouble. Rolex are in trouble." They're not. Their retail price is still the ones that we looked at. They're still selling nearly over double the retail price, or 40 to 100% over the list price. So Rolex aren't worried. They're not worried. It's definitely these dealers that were trading hands. But yeah, really interesting topic. So guys, let us know in the comment section down below what you think. Again, email any questions over to us on the casual watch review at gmail.com. Please join us on the live stream on the Sunday Social, Sundays at 4:30 Eastern. You can get involved in the conversation live. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time on Casual Watch Talk podcast.
See you soon.